3 o'clock. Okay, welcome. And thank you all for coming. We're going to talk about data governance and protecting student privacy and the importance of that to our students today. And I do want to preface this by saying that these are not things we have done successfully at Hutchinson Community College yet. This is a work in progress, right? So hopefully we can learn from each other. We can talk through, what needs to happen. And then, if you have stories to share, I would love to hear those. But I want it to be a productive and interactive. So if you have anything to say, let's say it and let's share. So with that, and I should have started with this. I did this last session too. My name is Mandie Lyons. I'm the CIO at Hutchinson Community College. My background is software development. I was a .NET developer for a long time. That led me to lead development teams. That led me to manage software projects. And then most recently, before coming to the college, I was managing digital transformations in agriculture. And man, that was freaking fun. But I really believe in the job we do, educating people so they can go make a living wage. And I hope that it's not lost on y'all what noble work we do at our institutions and in our communities. It is an amazing thing. I think all of us know we're not here to be millionaires, right? In higher ed, we're serving a greater good, and it's just pretty exciting. So I've been at Hutchinson Community College for about the last 18 months. One of my first days at the school, I about had an aneurysm because I walked across campus and computers are just left open. They're not locked. Nobody's sitting there, we are emailing student data, we don't have a great framework around governing our data, around understanding what is student privacy, what is data security, right? So we're going to talk through a few of those things today and talk about, what is data governance? How do we make it happen? So with that, it's a little hotter in here than I thought it was going to be. So I'm up here breaking a sweat. That's why. So let's start with data governance. At your organizations, just kind of show of hands, do you have data governance in place? Yay, Wichita State. Okay. The rest of us, are we trying to figure out what that looks like? I mean, that's where we're at, right? What does this look like? Okay. So, our current student information system was implemented in 1986. It's older than all of our traditional students and older than a lot of our non-traditional students, right? It is end of life in June, and we start a project to implement Genzyvar 1 in July. So right now is the perfect opportunity for us to have these data governance conversations, right? Because we're going to talk about migrating that data. We're going to talk about what our business processes are. We're going to talk about who has access to data, right? So now is a great time to have this data governance conversation. That's kind of what brought this about. That plus, I think we all understand that we are at a heightened risk of cyber attack. No one is safe, basically. And those attacks have grown exponentially since COVID because we have moved to such a virtual world. So governing our data, governing our systems is more important than ever. The other thing I want to mention is, and I know we talk about this a lot in technology, but our students that were our freshmen this year, our traditional students, were 2 years old when the first iPhone came out. We didn't even have a computer in my grade school. Okay. But these kids have never lived without technology, right? It is a part of everything they do. And so the expectation is up here, right? And I think we tend to think of these digital natives as people who are not worried about their privacy and then not worried about how institutions are keeping their data secure. And I'll give you some statistics later, but that's absolutely not the case. They are savvy, they are tech savvy, they understand we're collecting data about them. They're worried about what we're doing with that data. And so, you know, this has at HCC created the perfect storm, right? New SIS, new expectations from our students. Now is the time to talk about data governance. So we started these conversations a couple of months ago, talking about, you know, what does this really look like? And that was actually spurred on by a third event. I feel like I'm up here kind of giving a comedy routine to a point when I tell you guys about our legacy systems, but wait for it. So in October, our Novell group-wise server was dying. Okay. And we had been working on a project to get to Microsoft 365, and we just kind of had to press the gas pedal and get Microsoft 365 implemented, right? What kind of questions, any system admins in here? Any M365 admins? Because the kinds of questions that come up when you move to Microsoft 365 are all around governance, right? Who has access to this? Who should administrate this? Who gets to do the things, right? So we have all these things happening. So we started talking about governance, and it is a much larger conversation now than 5 years ago, right? All right, so let's talk about what is data governance. So data governance is really just an organization's approach to data and information and how we manage that. It's a formalized set of policies and procedures that encompass the full life cycle of data from the time we collect it to the time we dispose of it. I hope we dispose of it at some point. So data governance is everything we do to ensure data is secure, private, available, and usable. That includes actions people take, processes people follow, and the technology that supports people and processes, right? So 5 components to data governance. And some of this is largely based on research, since this is an in-progress thing. But the first thing I did when I thought, well, we've really got to do something about data governance. Like, we have to have a strategy here, and we have to be able to communicate out what that strategy is, right? Now, we have a privacy policy. Yay, go us, right? We do have a privacy policy. We have, policies around financial aid and the information we collect for financial aid and those kind of things. We really don't have a data governance policy structure, right? Not only that, we don't know who needs the data. There are times we don't know what we're collecting in our old legacy system, right? A lot of the data that we do collect is a need to know, right, type of data. So let's talk about what the 5 components of data governance are, and then we'll kind of go from there. So, and this is where we're at right now, actually, step 1 and 2. So performing due diligence, right? Who has access to what data? Where is the data going? Something that is helping us around this is that we're doing all this groundwork for our new SIS, right? And we're having to think about workflows and who's responsible for them and what we're doing in our workflows. We're also working on building a data inventory. So some people call that the record of authority. The names for that have changed over the years, but data inventory identifies the personal data that we collect, as well as where we keep it, how we protect it, and who has access to it, right? We need to know all those things. The key to data inventory is pinpointing the most sensitive data, right? That's where we really, what we really care about. However, when I was doing this research and I wrote this, I had not really heard anything about minimizing data or any kind of regulatory mandates about minimizing data, right? And that got me, and I'm pointing over here because that was a session that I forgot your name. Gina put on at one, and that made me think that we're collecting all kinds of data. Like, so I think I need to add to this that it's also about, making sure we're collecting minimum data to do the things that we need to do, right? Okay, next thing, after we build our data inventory, is building controls. So designing policies and procedures. And again, we have a privacy policy, we have a FERPA policy, we have a policy around financial aid, but we don't have anything that says this is how we are keeping your data private, right? This is how we are keeping your private data secure, right? And these are our data stewards, and they have access to this piece of data and this piece of data, right? We don't have any of that. So that's something else we're talking about now. How do we define how people and systems use our data? That helps us decide what kind of controls to put in place around our data. Next thing, actually, I said we were working on 1 and 2. We're actually working on 4 too, forming a data governance panel. So something we started doing for implementing our SIS was identifying our subject matter experts. What we found is that our subject matter experts are not necessarily our data stewards. I'll give you an example. Our registrar is our subject matter expert on student records. But guess what? She's not that close to the data anymore. Someone underneath her is the closer to the data. So that person will be our data steward for student records, right? So there is a bit of a, whoops, this little thing is touchy. So there's a bit of a process in figuring out who do we put on this data governance panel, right? Who are the actual stewards of the data? So we're doing a lot of discovery around that, but the SIS implementation that we're prepping for is helping us do that. Last thing, and Gina touched on this too, she touched on transparency, but we need to provide accurate and clear notice to our students, to our faculty, to our administration of how we are using their data and what policies speak to, how we're governing their data. And, depending on the needs of your institution, your governance structure might change. We're a 2-year institution and we award certificates for different programs as well as associate degrees. And so there may be we also have medical programs, right? So there may be some things that are different depending on what the needs of your institutions are around how you provide that notice and how you create alignment around that notice. That I think is going to be particularly difficult for us. Well, we've done it this way for 40 years, right? We're going to be up against that. Many of us kind of have a data governance strategy, but we may not call it that. It's not an official, it's not an institution-wide policy that is in place. It's just something that we kind of do, being IT people. But a lot of us, I think, are in the thick of this right now, figuring out what data governance looks like, who are the right people to have in the room, and so forth. Anybody in here going through that at your institution, figuring out what data governance looks like? Yeah, that's not easy. It is not easy. All right. So let's touch on a little bit about data privacy and data security, because I think these tend to get mixed up quite a bit, right? So data privacy is the right to control who gets to see your personal information. That's a dumbed down version of what Gina presented at one, right? It is about the right to control who gets to see my personal information, right? But data security is really about protecting information from unauthorized use, access, and disclosure. I spoke to this a little bit before, but a popularly held belief is that people who've grown up using digital technologies are digital natives. And I just read something that said digital natives were born in 1983 and later. I'm not sure about that. I think it might be a little later than that. But anyway, there's a popularly held belief that digital natives don't care about their privacy. That is particularly concerning because many of the people in that age group live their lives online, right? Even their academic life, if they're taking online classes. However, EDUCAUSE published a survey. This was actually in 2016 now, so it's a little bit old, but it's no less pertinent. This survey found that 1/3 of undergraduate students were concerned that technology advances may increasingly invade their privacy. A Gallup poll in 2015 found that 44% of millennials believe their personal information is kept private only some of the time. And that 26% of those millennials believe that their personal information is kept private none of the time. Another Gallup poll in 2016 showed that 44% of millennials trust companies to keep their personal information private most of the time, but 33% of millennials trusted companies to keep their personal information private none of the time. So I think those surveys are reflective of the growing awareness of all the data that's being collected in our world today. This year, there was an article published. This was March. Do I have that in here? Yeah, March. Infotech Research Group published an article that says that today's students are wary of privacy risks and they value privacy and data protection. So not only do they value their privacy and want their data protected, they're really used to living in a digital world. And what does that mean for all of us? Woo! That means the expectation from our students is way, way higher when it comes to digital technologies and keeping their data private. I had another little quote there I was going to give, but I'm going to skip it. Do y'all have a privacy policy? Everybody at your institutions have a privacy policy?
I would say that, yes, we do recognize privacy. We have a website privacy policy. We have HIPAA privacy policies, but we get to write an overarching institutional privacy policy because, like she says, we want it to be accurate.
Yeah.
And we aren't quite sure yet. We're still doing our data governance, data mining, figuring out what exactly we're collecting for what purposes. Yeah. And so my approach is just trying to target each vendor and get policies on those rather than writing a whole institutional one.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Because, and I think you mentioned this, but especially if we're in the cloud, right? Security is on our vendors. And do we trust our vendor partners, and do we know what they're collecting? Yeah.
Yeah. At some point, maybe somebody did there, but right now we're not. So don't feel too bad.
Right. I think a lot of us are in that boat. Does your institution have a way to let students know that data privacy and data security are taken seriously? Anybody?
And I think I should mention that we do address privacy with FERPA for sure. Like,
oh, yes.
Explicitly stated.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where we're at too. In fact, this was eye-opening for me that people actually care about that. Like, I thought maybe I was a weirdo, but I mean, I might still be a weirdo. Yeah, let's not discount that. So let's talk a little bit about data stewardship. You know, I think I mentioned that has not been as straightforward as I expected it would be, right? The people who actually know the data we're collecting and actually know what we're using it for are not necessarily the people I thought would be the ones that know that. So let's talk about that. I'm going to give you some stats. I love numbers. I do. That I found on explodingtopics.com. Okay. And this is current for 24. Approximately 328 million terabytes of data are created each day. Crazy amounts of data we're collecting, right? The amount of data generated annually has grown year over year since 2010. Anybody surprised about that? No. It is estimated that 90% of the world's data was generated in the last 2 years alone. So as technology has progressed exponentially, right? There was a time when we made an advancement here and then a next advancement. No, it's an advancement today and 50,000 advancements tomorrow and 100,000 advancements the next day, right? So as technology has progressed, the amount of data that we collect has progressed as well. And here's an interesting one for you. The US, just the US, has over 10 times more data centers than any other country in the world. So how can we as technology leaders be good stewards of this data that we're collecting about our students? And what even is a data steward? You know, what even is a data steward? So let's talk about that for a minute. So data stewards are the people within our institutions that are responsible for implementing data governance, policies and standards, and maintaining data quality and security. They're managers, administrators, you and I, and as I said, they're sometimes not the people you expect them to be that know the most about the data. So as we are forming our data governance oversight committee, we are trying to identify the people that actually know the data, right? What is data stewardship? Though, if I'm a data steward, what is my responsibility for that data? So data stewardship is basically, well, not basically, it is a comprehensive approach to data management to ensure quality and integrity, right? I think we need to add to that data minimization, because I really do think we're collecting too much data that we think we're going to do something with, right? But do we really even need to collect that kind of data, right? Gina, do you already have a data governance panel? Do you already have data stewards selected? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Was it hard?
They actually created, before I even got on board, the chief data officer, the CISO, and the CIO had created this whole governance structure. And then as I came on board, then I kind of got embedded.
Gotcha. So, anybody else have a panel of data stewards to manage data governance?
Did, but then it kind of fell out. You know, it's one of those things that I think one of the misconceptions most of the time is that people think data stewardship, they think IT.
Yes.
And
yes,
it's not IT.
Yes.
And so that's one of the big problems, is getting the people that are the data stewards invested in the process and everything too. And our institutional research led that at that time, but we've also had turnover in those positions. And I think with that came, you know, that was the thing that people were least concerned about in terms of getting accomplished. And so we were a good ways through our data inventory and things like that, and had the governance in place. But I think, you know, we got lost there somewhere.
Yeah.
And we need to, I mean, our CIO recognizes that fact, but she's also got to convince the ones that really need to own that,
right,
drive forward, that this is an important thing for the university.
Right, yeah. I think your story is, not unique. I think a lot of our institutions have been through a great amount of change in the last few years. For, HCC, we're kind of in the same boat. I think I have 2 employees left that have been in our ITS department, for more than 2 years. It's been an extraordinary amount of change and people change. And with the people change, you lose the knowledge, right, of some of those things, and that's hard. Yeah.
On your comment for data minimalization,
Mhm.
that's not always driven from the IT side, it's driven
Yeah.
from the business side. Because oftentimes they'll buy that before we even get input. For example, the athletics department or rec will buy treadmills, oh, we're gonna put this on the internet and they're gonna have a login and whatnot. I think that I agree with what you said. How do we somewhat minimize it? But I think you minimize not by the number of applications, but by having a expiration date on some of the data and have some way to purge and cleanse and have that in place and formalized rather than the IT say, no, you can only collect this amount of data.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it takes a lot of education. I think people outside of IT don't really understand what's being collected on those treadmills, right?
Yeah, they have no idea.
Yeah, they have no idea.
It's like,
They're just, oh, it's a
the
cool
vendor
new
says that
technology.
It'll be fine,
Right.
And then the vendor, God bless them.
Yes.
Full hallway full of them.
Yes.
No IT support needed.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think we all struggle with that at no point. I also struggle on the converse of things. One of the biggest things we were up against when we were getting from that Novell GroupWise server over to Outlook was our HR director was like, I need my GroupWise archives. Well, what do you need your GroupWise archives for? Anybody want to guess what the HR director needed his GroupWise archives for? Oh, man. Employee data, like, yeah, like we wouldn't believe. So I think we've got the buying the new things or misusing the old or current things or, and I think for us, those are gonna be conversations that make sense right now while we're implementing a new SIS. I don't think those are easy conversations to have. I really don't. Especially not with athletics.
Right, and especially from the IT side. So one of the questions I had is what challenges do you have trying to lead data governance from an IT side versus a lot of organizations run that from the business side?
Yes. And it is just the rule, right? I think in private industry, we're a little better about setting those rules, right? And just expecting people to follow them. Whereas in higher ed, it has to go through this committee and that committee and the president's cabinet. And that's really been a struggle for me. Getting used to all well, I don't want to call it red tape, but it kind of is. I mean, you just have a lot of iterations to go through to get to the thing. And unfortunately, I don't have great answers. I will tell you, at my last session, I talked about building influence with people. And one of the first people I built influence with at HCC was the athletic director. And there's a reason. There's a reason for that.
What things did you draw your influence from for data governance and whatnot?
Well, I would say, because I'm only about 18 months into my career at HCC, I would say that it's a work in progress. I am still building influence, but I literally have a template, and I can share the GitHub repo with you if you want to look at the template, but I literally have a template for building influence.
Okay.
And then I'll tell this story real quick and then I'll get back on track. I told this at my last session, but I came from agriculture. And I started at an agriculture cooperative in 2015. And one of the first meetings I had was with 2 of the sales managers. And I thought, these are the biggest jerks I have ever met in my life. There is no way I can work with them. Well, then I heard this presentation about building influence and how to build influence and how to be intentional about it. And I literally have kind of a worksheet now. This is the person I'm gonna build influence with. This is what I know about them. This is what I start just finding out, what do they like? What's their background? Do they have kids? And just connecting with people on a human level. And then it makes the IT conversation so much easier.
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah.
The question was more related to where do you draw your inspiration from for data governance? For example, at Washburn, the DMBOK, data management book knowledge,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the book Non-Invasive Data Governance.
Yeah. So a lot of the research that I pulled from was from Informatica. I am big on, I always look at the Gartner quadrant to kind of see what other people are doing and what are kind of the hot topics in IT. And so I kind of pulled from all these other places. And then, believe it or not, but the Department of Education has on their website, and it's kind of old now, but it's still good information. They have some data governance information on their website, and I pulled from that as well. So that was kind of my inspiration for putting this all together. So I had to start somewhere. We have to have a strategy around this.
So I don't think there's any wrong way.
Right, right. Yeah,
I
Gina.
have that EDUCAUSE has like data governance communities that you can join and share ideas. They have monthly meetings. So definitely use that as a resource too, because it gets people working in data and higher education and understand
Yeah.
what we're going through.
Yeah, that was a good call. And you heard me quote an EDUCAUSE survey. So I did pull some of my information from EDUCAUSE too. I actually learned a ton from EDUCAUSE. Okay, so it's interesting that you talked about, I think you talked about people think that data stewardship is an IT thing, right? So a few years ago in private industry, we were talking about, how do we democratize technology? How do we get technology into the hands of the people? Is that not the scariest mess you ever heard of in your life? Getting technology into the hands of the people, right? It's kind of frightening. But that's really what we want to do with our data, right? We want to get it into the hands of the people that actually need that data to do their job and take care of our students, right? So, I have been considering, that has to be a part of our governance strategy, right? It has to play into everything we do in our data governance strategy. Because it's more than, I said it's access to data. It is access to data, but it's more than access to data. It's enabling everyone at our institution, irrespective of their technical know-how. I know that's so frightening. It really is. But it's empowering people to work with data comfortably, to feel confident talking about it and making informed decisions because they understand this is PII, or this is one of those secondary PII fields, right? And it's about building the student experience powered by data, right? That's what we're all here for, to make students successful, to give them a great student experience. So I did a little research on this, like, how are we going to do this? Does anybody remember when Microsoft's goal was to put a Microsoft computer on every desk in the world? Does everybody remember that? Okay. Well, then they kind of shifted to, okay, let's give everybody a suite of tools that they can use to be the most productive people in the world, right? Well, how do we at our institutions get our data to the people, right, that need to have it and need to do their jobs with it, right? So here are my ideas. And these are my ideas, and don't throw any rotten fruit or anything at me. But if we really want to democratize data, then we need to embrace a few things, right? We need to empower employees to feel comfortable asking data-related questions. I am a technology, okay, I will say this though, I was a software developer, I'm not a hardware person. If something goes wrong with a piece of hardware, I am on the phone calling someone, right? Okay, just putting that out there. I have been made to feel stupid by other technology people because I don't know the thing, right? And they don't know who I am. They have no idea, what I do, none of that stuff. Are we doing that to our end users? How do we make them feel comfortable coming to us, asking the questions about data, right? It's hard because we know it. And I have people ask me stuff sometimes that I'm like, what in God's name? How can you not know this, right? But it's a thing. It's our lives, not theirs, right? So we have to figure out ways to empower our employees to feel comfortable coming to us with their data questions. Second, we need to provide the right tools to enable everyone to work with data. I don't know for certain what that looks like HCC or for HCC right now, but I am kind of thinking, and this will also be dependent on our SIS implementation, but ultimately I am thinking Azure data in the cloud, right? Using Databricks for ETL, using their data warehouse, their data lake for machine learning, all the things it can do, and Power BI reporting on top of that. There are a lot of things that people ask right now, in particular, our business office for. Our business office is not full of report writers, right? So I'm thinking for us going forward, it's something like Power BI that can be a self-service. I'm a super user. I know what I'm looking for kind of thing. I don't know that for sure yet, but I do know we need to give people the ability to get to the data they need for their jobs, right? They don't always have that now. They rely on other people. And then we need to help people perceive this empowerment, this democratization as an ongoing process, right? That might require a culture shift. That is hard. Our institutions have old, traditional, right, cultures. And so that's a really hard thing, but we have to help people change their thinking about data. And as that evolves, I will let y'all know, because I frankly don't know what that looks like yet. I've had some pretty brutal feedback since I've been at the college. And one of the things in particular that I've gotten several times is, it's like you're trying to virtualize all our technology, like we never talk to a person, we just talk to a thing. No, we put in a new help desk system. I mean, entering a ticket is not like requiring people to like be virtual, but it is a culture shift. It is not what they're used to. The approach used to be every department had a support person assigned to them and they were their partner, to take care of them. Problem with that comes when somebody has to be sick, right? Or out for an emergency or whatever. And then you don't have anybody who's the expert anymore, right? So, so how do we do that? How do we change our cultures? I don't know the answer to that yet, but it has to start somewhere. For us, it's going to start in our ITS department. We are far past a time when we were the IT guy, right? And there was one of us. We are teams now. And we can't be the guys that are in the room in the basement and someone shoves a pizza and some ho-hos and a Mountain Dew to us under the door every now and then, right? We have to be highly collaborative in today's technical world, right? I don't know the way we do that, but I know for us, it's going to start in our department. And I hope that people will start to see our department as an example of what that culture looks like. So that's kind of where I'm starting. To be continued. I don't know how this is going to work out. So if we do these things, right, we make people comfortable, we give them the right tools, we create a culture of empowerment and giving people the access they need, that solves these problems. I don't have access to the data I need. Because frankly, the SQL guy doesn't want to help me. He wants to be alone in his room in the basement. And he doesn't want to give anybody access to anything, right? Ever. So it solves that problem, right? I don't have access to the data I need to do my job. I can't trust the data. How many people have heard that? We had an issue on our student bills. This was before I ever even got to the college. And I'm still hearing about this issue on the student bills, right? And that's a big stinking deal, because part of the student experience is how am I gonna pay for my college, right? So, you know, I can't trust the data. I have to export it into a spreadsheet, and then I go over here and I compare all my, I mean, oh my gosh, it's crazy. But we can help solve that, right? And last thing is that, you know, I have access to the data, but I don't have the skill set to ask you the right questions about the data, right? If we give people the right tools and train them, that will solve that problem, right? I have access. I have the skill to get the thing I need. And guess what? I don't have to wait on the business office, and I don't have to wait on somebody in IT, and I don't have to wait on IR to get me this thing I needed 6 months ago, right? So, that's kind of where I'm gonna end. This is a, you know, it's a new initiative for us. It's gonna be ongoing for some time. Our SIS implementation starts in July. It's gonna be an 18 to 24-month ordeal. You'll never see me again. You'll know why, right? This is gonna be one of those elephants that you eat one bite at a time, right? So as this evolves, I hope that we'll all, you know, be able to share more information with each other, figure out what is working, what is not working. How do we influence the culture at our institutions? How do we get people what they need to do their jobs? Any questions? I hope this was helpful. I hope this was a good discussion. It was helpful for you all. Any questions for me? Yes.
How do you plan to enforce these? Because not everyone's gonna be on board.
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, I want to start with our department. I want to start with our team. I feel like we're in a good place right now. I feel like we are aligned and that we have a common goal, right? And I'm going to start there. And hopefully from there, we can influence the departments around us. That's my hope. I don't know if that's going to work. I'm also going to pray and fast, and I'll put on leather pants and do the chicken dance if I, you know, if that'll affect some change. But no, that's really hard. That's really hard. It's really hard too when we have competing priorities, right? I feel like at our institution, y'all may have this too. I feel like it's like faculty against administration. Like, what? Are we all here to take care of students or not? You know, it's really interesting culture wise. So I don't quite know, but I'm going to start with us. I'm going to start with my circle of influence, and then I'm going to hope that all the other people that we interact with become a part of a bigger circle of influence, right? And that it just grows. We'll see if that works. So, any other questions? No? Okay, thank you all for coming.